The vast emptiness of space surrounded the Imperial flagship Dominion as it entered the Sol system. Admiral Thorne stood at the command deck, his six-fingered hands clasped behind his back as he studied the holographic display of the third planet. Primitive, he muttered, noting the rudimentary satellites and space stations orbiting the blue world. Yet another species to bring into the fold. The Galactic Empire had conquered over 300 civilizations across 12 galaxies in its 10,000-year history. The procedure was always the same: assess, intimidate, conquer, and rule. Humans would be no different. "Status report," Thorne ordered. Commander Raoul stepped forward. "The natives call it Earth. They have basic space travel capabilities, limited to their own solar system. Their weapons are primitive, mostly kinetic and nuclear. Our scans detect no energy shields or faster-than-light technology." Thorne nodded. This would be simple. Send the standard first contact message. Give them one planetary rotation to surrender. On Earth, Captain Mike Wilson of the United Earth Defense Force stared in disbelief at the massive alien ships appearing near the moon. Alarms blared throughout the lunar base as tracking systems registered objects larger than anything humans had ever built. "Get me the Secretary General," Wilson ordered, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his chest, "and alert all military commands." Within hours, world leaders gathered in emergency session. The alien message had been received and translated. "Submit or be destroyed." "They're not even trying to hide their intentions," said General Taylor, her weathered face grim in the conference room's harsh light. "At least we know where we stand." Wilson shook his head. "Our orbital defenses can't match those ships. Not head-on." "Then we don't fight head-on," replied Dr. Anna Wright, head of Special Weapons Research. She activated a display showing plans that had been hidden from public view for decades. "Project Guardian is ready for deployment." Back on the Dominion, Admiral Thorne received unexpected news. "Sir, the humans have responded," reported his communications officer. "Their surrender already." "That was faster than expected," Thorne said with satisfaction. "No, sir. They've declined our terms. They're requesting peaceful contact instead." Thorne's upper eye ridges raised in surprise. This was unusual. Most species understood the futility of resistance when faced with imperial might. "Scan their military movements," he ordered. The results were puzzling. Human forces were deploying, but not in standard defensive formations. They were dispersing, spreading thin across their planet, and into hidden positions throughout their system. "Strange tactics," murmured Commander Rao. "Perhaps they don't understand warfare." "Or perhaps they understand something we don't," countered Thorne. He had conquered many worlds, and something about this didn't feel right. "Launch a probe to their largest military installation. Let's see how they respond." The probe descended toward Earth's North American continent. As it approached, it was instantly targeted by multiple defense systems. Instead of attempting to destroy it, however, the humans allowed it to observe their visible forces, which appeared woefully inadequate against Imperial power. "They're showing us obsolete weapons," Thorne realized suddenly. This is deliberate. As if confirming his suspicion, a small human craft approached the probe. It made no aggressive moves but transmitted a simple message. "This is Captain Lisa Grant of Earth Defense. We know you're watching. We don't want war, but we will defend ourselves. Once you start this, there's no going back. Choose wisely." Admiral Thorne felt an unfamiliar sensation, doubt. Something in the human's tone carried absolute conviction. "Sir," Commander Rao interrupted his thoughts. "High Command expects conquest within a standard week. Shall I prepare the invasion fleet?" Thorne gazed at the blue planet. The Empire had never retreated from a conquest, yet something told him these humans would not be like the others. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered finally, "but tell them to expect resistance." He had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. The Imperial invasion force descended upon Earth with overwhelming confidence. 5,000 warships filled the skies, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight as they positioned themselves over major population centers. Admiral Thorne commanded from the Dominion, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. "Begin the standard bombardment sequence," he ordered. "Target their military bases first, then government centers." Green beams of energy lanced down from the Imperial ships, vaporizing structures and leaving smoking craters. The Empire had used this tactic on hundreds of worlds. No civilization had ever withstood the first wave. But something unexpected happened. "Sir, our ships in Sector 4 report taking fire," announced Commander Rao, confusion evident in his voice. "Impossible," Thorne replied. "Their weapons can't penetrate our shields." The tactical display told a different story. 3 Imperial cruisers had gone dark, their signals vanishing from the grid. Before Thorne could process this information, more alerts sounded. Multiple hidden launch sites detected, missiles rising from underwater positions and mountain bunkers. Thorne watched in disbelief as human weapons, far more advanced than their scans had indicated, erupted from concealed locations. The primitive nuclear warheads they expected were instead fitted with something that allowed them to bypass Imperial shields. They hid their true capabilities, Thorne realized. This was a trap. Across Earth, human forces sprang into action. They hadn't placed their best weapons in obvious military bases, but had scattered them in unmarked facilities, civilian areas, and natural formations. In the Pacific Ocean, Commander Jack Miller stood inside a submarine control room as his vessel surfaced briefly to launch its payload. "Fire everything we've got," he ordered. "Make them count." The missiles streaked upward, their targeting systems locked on Imperial ships. When they detonated, they released not just explosive force but electromagnetic pulses specifically calibrated to disrupt Imperial technology. "How did they know our shield frequencies?" demanded Thorne as reports of damage flooded in. "We've never encountered these humans before." The answer came when human communications were intercepted. They had been studying a crashed Imperial scout ship for years, one the Empire didn't even realize had been lost. From that single vessel, humans had reverse-engineered enough understanding of Imperial systems to develop countermeasures. In orbit, Colonel Tom Foster led Earth's small but determined Space Force in what should have been a suicide mission. Their ships were smaller and fewer, but they moved in unpredictable patterns that Imperial targeting systems struggled to track. "Don't engage directly," Foster instructed his pilots. "Hit and run. Make them chase you into the debris fields." The human vessels darted between larger Imperial ships, drawing their fire and causing the aliens to hit their own forces. It was chaos. Beautiful, planned chaos. Admiral Thorne slammed his fist on the command console. "Adjust tactics. Form defensive clusters and establish a perimeter." But the Empire's military doctrine was built on overwhelming force, not adaptation. Their formations were predictable, their responses programmed. The humans, meanwhile, seemed to have no fixed strategy, changing approaches constantly. In an underground command center, General Taylor monitored the battle alongside world leaders. "Phase 1 is working better than expected," she reported. "Their casualties are at 17% and climbing." "And ours?" asked a concerned official. "Heavy," she admitted. "But they're hitting decoys in many cases. We're trading buildings for their ships, a bargain we can afford." Back on the Dominion, Admiral Thorne faced an unthinkable reality. The first wave was failing. 1/5 of his invasion force was either destroyed or heavily damaged, and they had secured none of their objectives. "Sir," Commander Rao spoke quietly, "High Command is demanding a status report." Thorne stared at the blue planet below, now scattered with the burning wrecks of Imperial ships. "Tell them." He hesitated, the words unfamiliar and bitter. "Tell them we require reinforcements. The humans are not as primitive as we thought." As he gave the order to regroup, Thorne couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a very different kind of war. 3 weeks into the war, the Imperial Council received reports that defied belief. What should have been a simple conquest had turned into a bloody stalemate. Admiral Thorne stood before the holographic projections of the council members, their expressions showing varying degrees of displeasure. "Explain yourself, Admiral," demanded High Counselor Draz, his voice echoing in the communication chamber. "How can primitives resist our second wave?" Thorne displayed the battle footage. "The humans are not fighting conventionally, counselors. They've abandoned defensive positions and switched to guerrilla tactics. They're striking our supply lines and vanishing before we can respond." On Mars, humanity's largest off-Earth colony had transformed from a scientific outpost into a fortress. Commander Rhea Peters led a team through underground tunnels as Imperial troops searched the surface. "Move quickly," she whispered to her squad. "We have 15 minutes to plant the charges and get clear." The explosive devices they carried were cobbled together from mining equipment and captured Imperial technology. Humans excelled at using whatever materials were available to create weapons. As they reached the foundations of the Imperial landing platform, Peters nodded to her demolitions expert. "Make it count, Ben." Ben placed the charges with practiced hands. "They'll never see this coming again." Back at the Imperial command ship, Admiral Thorne studied human history with growing concern. Their planet's past was filled with endless wars, showing a species that had spent millennia fighting itself. "Look at this," he told Commander Ral, displaying ancient human conflicts. "When outnumbered, they don't surrender. They adapt. When outgunned, they improvise. They've been practicing war against themselves for their entire history. But they're still technologically inferior," Ral pointed out. "And yet they destroyed 30% of our second wave," Thorne replied grimly. On Earth's moon, a different kind of battle was taking place. Dr. Wright led a team of scientists working day and night to understand captured Imperial technology. "Their power systems operate on principles we theorized but never implemented," she explained to General Taylor, pointing to disassembled alien devices. "With a few modifications, we can adapt our existing weapons to match their shield frequencies." "How long?" asked Taylor. "Days, not weeks. Humans are quick learners when survival depends on it." In orbit around Jupiter, Lieutenant Carl Davis commanded a small fleet of retrofitted mining vessels, now armed with makeshift weapons. Imperial supply ships passed through this region regularly, unaware of the threat hiding in the gas giant's complex magnetic field. "Target locked," reported his sensor officer. "They don't suspect anything." Davis gave the order. "Fire." The mining lasers, originally designed to cut through asteroid rock, had been modified to emit the same energy frequency as Imperial weapons. They sliced through the supply ship's hull before its crew could raise shields. "Boarding team, go," Davis ordered. As human soldiers entered the crippled Imperial vessel, they found something crucial: navigational data showing the locations of Imperial staging areas throughout the solar system. Admiral Thorne received the news of this loss with growing dread. He sent an urgent message to the Council. "The humans are not merely resisting. They're learning. Each engagement makes them more dangerous. They're capturing our technology and adapting it with alarming speed. I recommend immediate deployment of our reserve fleets." The Council was stunned. No species had ever required such measures for subjugation. "This is unacceptable," High Counselor Draz declared. "The Empire does not commit additional resources to primitives. Implement maximum force with what you have." As Thorne received these orders, alarms blared throughout his ship. "Multiple explosions detected on Mars outpost," reported Commander Ral. "Our main landing platform and 3 supply depots gone." Thorne watched the security footage of humans disappearing into hidden tunnels moments before the explosions. He understood something the Council did not. The Empire was not fighting a conventional war anymore. "They're everywhere and nowhere," he murmured. "And they're just getting started." On Earth, humanity prepared for the long fight ahead, their determination hardening with each passing day. They would not surrender their world. Not now, not ever. 6 months into the war, Admiral Thorne stood silently as the holographic display showed the unfolding Battle of Jupiter. What had begun as a routine operation to secure the gas giant's moons had turned into the Empire's greatest military disaster in 5 centuries. "Status report," he demanded, his voice tight with controlled fury. "We've lost the entire 7th Fleet, sir," Commander Rao replied. 87 ships destroyed, 43 critically damaged. And the humans? They lost nearly all their vessels, sir, but they achieved their objective. The display showed the aftermath. Imperial ships adrift or broken, surrounded by the remnants of much smaller human craft. The humans had sacrificed an entire fleet in kamikaze attacks, ramming their vessels directly into critical systems of the Imperial warships. "They're insane," whispered another officer. "No rational species sacrifices themselves willingly." "They don't see it as sacrifice," Thorne countered. "They see it as victory at any cost." On Earth, General Taylor awarded posthumous medals to the families of the Jupiter battles fallen. The ceremony was broadcast globally, not as a moment of sorrow, but as a celebration of heroism. "Their sacrifice has given us time," she told the assembled crowd. "Time that our scientists and engineers have used well." Behind her stood the first prototype of Project Thunderbolt, a warship built with a fusion of human ingenuity and reverse-engineered Imperial technology. Where Imperial ships were elegant and standardized, this vessel was ugly, asymmetrical, and deadly. Dr. Wright stepped forward to explain. "The Empire builds perfect ships for perfect battles. We built an imperfect ship for the messy reality of war. Its weapon systems are redundant, its hull designed to function even when catastrophically damaged. Like humanity itself, it refuses to die easily." In his private quarters, Admiral Thorne compiled his report to the Imperial Council. After months of studying humans, he had reached a disturbing conclusion. "Humans evolved as persistence predators," he wrote. "Unlike most sentient species that evolved from herd or pack animals, humans hunted by exhausting their prey. They would pursue targets for days until they collapsed from fatigue. This mindset permeates their approach to warfare. They do not concede when outmatched. They endure and adapt." The Council received his report with skepticism. No species had ever forced the Empire to reconsider its approach to conquest. High Counselor Draz's response was predictable. "Your assessment is noted, Admiral, but the Empire does not retreat. We are sending the first Imperial fleet. 15,000 ships will end this human resistance once and for all." When Thorne received these orders, he knew the Council had made a fatal mistake. They still viewed humans as just another species to be conquered, not understanding what made them unique. Meanwhile, in underground facilities across Earth and its colonies, humans prepared for the coming assault. They had spent months gathering intelligence, capturing Imperial technology, and developing countermeasures. Lieutenant Emma Gray led a special forces team through training exercises using captured Imperial weapons. Her soldiers had learned to operate enemy equipment, understand their tactics, and exploit their weaknesses. "They expect us to fight like them," she told her squad, "but we'll fight like humans." The most significant breakthrough came when Dr. Wright's team deciphered the Imperial communication protocols. For the first time, humans could listen to enemy transmissions, giving them precious advance warning of Imperial movements. General Taylor gathered world leaders to present their new advantage. "We now know they're sending their main fleet. They expect this to break us. Instead, it will be their undoing." When the first Imperial fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system, Admiral Thorne sent one final warning to his superiors. "The humans have had time to prepare. This is exactly what they want." His warning went unheeded. The massive armada began its advance toward Earth, its commanders confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm human defenses. But as the first Imperial ships approached Mars, they encountered no resistance. The human forces had vanished, seemingly retreated. "They had finally learned to fear us," proclaimed the fleet commander. Admiral Thorne knew better. The humans hadn't retreated. They were waiting. 1 year into the war, Imperial High Command faced an unprecedented situation. The First Imperial Fleet, pride of the Empire, had suffered catastrophic losses, not from a frontal assault, but from what humans called asymmetric warfare. Admiral Thorne, now promoted to War Commander after the execution of his predecessor, addressed the furious Imperial Council. "The humans let us penetrate deep into their system," he explained, displaying tactical holograms. "Then attacked our supply lines and communication relays with hidden forces. By the time our fleet realized they were isolated, it was too late." "Impossible." High Counselor Draz slammed his fist down. "How could primitives outsmart our greatest military minds?" "Because," Thorne said quietly, "we keep thinking of them as primitives." The reality had become clear. Humans had studied Imperial tactics, identified patterns, and exploited them ruthlessly. They didn't fight according to any recognizable doctrine, shifting strategies constantly. On the outskirts of the solar system, General Taylor oversaw the launch of Operation Spearhead from the command deck of the UES Defiance, Earth's first true warship built with hybrid technology. "All ships report ready, General," announced Captain Rogers. "The fleet awaits your command." Taylor surveyed the assembled vessels, 100 ships, each carrying technology that didn't exist a year ago. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for in surprise and innovation. "The Empire thinks we can only defend," she told her officers. "Today we show them how humans attack." Begin jump sequence. For the first time in the war, human ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, using engines reverse-engineered from captured Imperial technology. Their destination: Proxima Station, the Empire's forward operating base. The Imperial commander at Proxima Station, General Lark, had grown complacent. Humans had never ventured beyond their own system. His base was considered impregnable, protected by automated defenses and a garrison of elite troops. "Sir," his aide interrupted his meal. "Sensors detect anomalies approaching the outer perimeter." "Probably asteroid debris," Lark dismissed. "The automated defenses will handle it." Moments later, alarms blared throughout the station. The debris had materialized into human warships that moved in attack patterns never before recorded in Imperial tactical databases. "How did they get here?" Lark demanded, rushing to the command center. "How do they have jump capability?" Lieutenant Gray led the first boarding team onto the station. Her soldiers moved with practiced precision, using tactics developed specifically for Imperial corridor designs. "Remember," she told her team through helmet comms, "they expect frontal assaults. Hit them from angles they don't defend." The humans attacked using routes Imperial designers considered too small for assault. Maintenance tunnels, ventilation systems, and waste disposal chutes. They deployed magnetic devices that disabled Imperial weapons while leaving their own functioning. Within hours, Proxima Station, the Empire's supposedly impregnable forward base, fell to human forces. General Taylor walked through the captured command center, surveying their prize. "Download everything," she ordered. "Star charts, fleet movements, communication protocols. Then plant the package." The package was a sophisticated computer virus designed to infiltrate the Imperial network when they inevitably tried to purge their systems remotely. Back at Imperial Central Command, Admiral Thorne received the news with grim vindication. His warnings had been prophetic. "They've gone offensive," he told the Council. "And they've captured our technology intact." "How could this happen?" demanded Counselor Draz. "Because we underestimated them at every turn," Thorne replied. "They've studied us more thoroughly than we studied them. While we saw primitives, they were learning our weaknesses." Throughout Imperial space, reports began arriving of human raids on outposts and supply depots. They struck without warning, vanishing before reinforcements arrived. Each attack seemed designed not just for strategic advantage, but to spread fear. In a bold move, humans began broadcasting footage of Imperial defeats across enemy communication channels. The psychological impact was devastating to Imperial morale. "They're not just fighting our ships," Thorne realized. They're fighting our confidence. As the Empire scrambled to adapt, humans prepared their next offensives. The war had entered a new phase, one where humanity had seized the initiative, and the mighty Galactic Empire found itself responding to the moves of primitives. 2 years into the conflict, the unthinkable happened. Imperial ships began large-scale withdrawal from human space. Massive warships that had once darkened Earth's skies now fled before the advancing Terran fleet. War Commander Thorn stood alone on the observation deck of the Dominion, watching distant explosions as human forces overwhelmed another Imperial stronghold. His once pristine uniform now bore the marks of numerous battles, his posture less rigid than before. "Status report," he said as Commander Ral joined him. "The 7th Quadrant has fallen," Ral reported grimly. "Our forces are regrouping at Centauri Outpost, but human ships have been detected on approach there as well." Thorn nodded. "And the Council? They demand your presence. Immediately." The Imperial Council chamber was no longer filled with the confidence of earlier days. Many seats stood empty, their occupants executed for failures or killed in human attacks that had reached surprisingly close to the Imperial core worlds. "This retreat is unacceptable," High Counselor Draz declared, though his voice lacked its former authority. "The Empire has never ceded territory to lesser beings." Thorn stepped forward, activating a holographic display. "With respect, Counselor, continuing this war is suicide. Observe." The display showed the transformed human fleet. What had begun as cobbled-together hybrid ships had evolved into a formidable armada that incorporated the best of Imperial technology with uniquely human innovations. "They now have 3 times the vessels they began with," Thorn explained. "While we've lost over 40% of our total military strength, but numbers tell only part of the story." He switched the display to show captured footage of General Taylor addressing her troops aboard the UES Vengeance, the newest human flagship. "Every planet, moon, and outpost we liberate provides more resources for our cause," she told her soldiers. "The Empire thought they could break us. Instead, they've made us stronger. Today we free Proxima Colony. Tomorrow we push deeper into their territory." In the council chamber, silence fell as the implications became clear. "They're not just defending anymore," one counselor whispered. "They're expanding." "Precisely," Thorn confirmed. "And they've begun forming alliances." This last revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Several subjugated species, witnessing Imperial vulnerability for the first time in millennia, had reached out to humans for assistance. The Empire now faced the prospect of multiple rebellions inspired by human success. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Vengeance, Lieutenant Gray, now Colonel Gray, briefed her Special Forces team on their next mission. "Intelligence has confirmed that the Ridian people have been supplying the Empire under duress," she explained, showing images of an alien species that resembled tall, blue-skinned humanoids. "Their representatives have requested our help in overthrowing their Imperial governors." "Another ally?" asked one of her soldiers. "Potentially our most valuable yet," Gray replied. "The Ridians control significant shipyards. With their help, we could double our production capacity." Back on Earth, Dr. Wright unveiled the latest breakthrough to General Taylor via secure communication. "We've fully decoded their faster-than-light technology," she reported excitedly. "We can now jump farther than Imperial ships and with greater accuracy. We've effectively negated their last technological advantage." Taylor nodded. "Perfect timing. The President is announcing the formation of the Terran Alliance tomorrow, officially extending protection to all species who wish to break from Imperial control." On the Dominion, Thorn received emergency transmissions from 3 different sectors simultaneously. Human forces had appeared where they couldn't possibly be, striking critical Imperial facilities with precision. "They're using improved jump technology," he realized. "We can no longer predict where they'll strike." Thorn composed his most urgent message yet to the Emperor himself, bypassing the Council entirely. "Your Imperial Majesty, we face extinction if we continue this war. The humans have surpassed our military technology and are forming alliances with our subject worlds. I formally request permission to propose armistice terms while we still maintain some negotiating position." As the message transmitted, Thorn watched another Imperial outpost fall to human forces. The mighty Empire, which had conquered galaxies, was running from creatures it had once dismissed as primitives. The most humiliating truth was now undeniable. They were losing to humans, and losing badly. The great hall of the Imperial Palace fell silent as War Commander Thorn entered. Once, he would have been announced with fanfare, his arrival marked by ceremonial guards and flourishes. Today, he walked alone across the vast marble floor toward the Emperor's throne. Emperor Vex Xii, ruler of 1,000 worlds, looked diminished somehow. The strain of impending defeat had aged him visibly. "War Commander," the Emperor acknowledged, his voice echoing in the nearly empty chamber. "You come bearing news of our surrender." Thorn bowed stiffly. "Armistice, Your Majesty. The terms have been finalized." "Tell me why I should sign this," the Emperor demanded. "Why the greatest empire in history should bow to creatures who, 3 years ago, had barely left their own planet." "Because if we don't," Thorn replied bluntly, "there may not be an empire left to rule." He activated a holographic display showing the current state of the war. Imperial territories glowed red where human forces had penetrated. Nearly a third of the map burned with that crimson stain. The humans have formed the Terran Alliance with 7 formerly subjugated species, Thorn explained. Their combined industrial capacity now rivals our own, and their technological development continues to accelerate. The Emperor studied the display, his ancient face lined with worry and shame. "How did we fail so completely?" "We failed to understand our enemy," Thorn answered. "We thought technology and numbers were all that mattered. The humans proved otherwise." 3 days later, the Imperial delegation arrived at the neutral meeting location, a space station orbiting a barren moon. General Taylor led the human representatives, her uniform simple but immaculate. Behind her stood Colonel Gray and Captain Rogers, faces solemn. "War Commander," Taylor greeted Thorn formally. "We're prepared to discuss terms." The negotiations lasted 16 hours. When they concluded, history had been made. The first time in Imperial history that territory had been ceded to another power. The terms were clear: recognition of human sovereignty over their solar system and 12 surrounding star systems, a demilitarized buffer zone, and non-aggression pacts with the newly formed Terran Alliance. As they prepared to depart, Thorn approached Taylor privately. "You fought well, General," he said. "But I'm curious, why didn't you push for more? Your forces could have continued advancing." Taylor's expression remained neutral. "This isn't about conquest, Commander. It's about security. We have what we need. For now." The last 2 words hung between them, heavy with implication. Upon his return to Imperial space, Thorn discovered something troubling. Intelligence reports showed humans were already establishing defensive positions throughout their new territory, developing weapons platforms and early warning systems. "They're preparing for the next war," he told the Emperor. "One that we haven't even considered yet." The Emperor nodded slowly. "Then we must prepare as well. What do you recommend?" "Distribution of knowledge," Thorn replied. "Every Imperial commander must understand what we've learned about humans." Within days, a classified directive was transmitted to all Imperial military commands. Priority ALPJ. If you encounter humans, do not engage. Retreat and report immediately. This species represents a Class 1 threat to Imperial security. Attached was Thorn's comprehensive analysis of human warfare, which concluded with a chilling assessment. Humans don't fight to win battles or wars. They fight to permanently end threats. Where other species seek victory, humans seek absolute security through the complete neutralization of potential dangers. They will sacrifice, adapt, and endure beyond all rational limits to achieve this goal. Captain Mike Wilson, now appointed as the first human ambassador to the Imperial capital, arrived with a small delegation. As he presented his credentials to the emperor, imperial nobles whispered among themselves, studying these strange creatures who had humbled their mighty civilization. Later that evening, at a formal reception, Ambassador Wilson approached War Commander Thorne. "I hope this peace lasts," Commander Wilson said, offering a traditional human handshake. Thorne accepted the gesture cautiously. "As do I, Ambassador. But I've studied your kind extensively now. Peace isn't in your nature when you feel threatened." Wilson smiled slightly. "You're right. That's why I hope your empire honors our agreement to the letter." As Wilson moved away to speak with other dignitaries, Thorne turned to his successor, the newly appointed Imperial Defense Minister. "Remember this," Thorne said quietly, watching the humans navigate the room with careful diplomacy. "We didn't lose to superior technology or numbers. We lost because we failed to understand that humans don't know how to surrender. They only know how to escalate until they win." The defense minister nodded gravely. "I'll remember, Commander." "See that everyone does," Thorne replied, "or we'll face them again. And next time, they won't stop at an armistice."